Now, all of this comes as the state prepares for its first execution since 2022 after years of a pause. In just hours, Aaron Gunches is scheduled to be executed at the Florence State Prison for the 2002 murder of Ted Price. Tonight, here's a look back on the history of why we've had those executions paused here in Arizona.
We now know Joseph Wood was injected with drugs 15 times, and the entire death penalty system is now under review.
For it to take 2 hours for a man to die, I think is certainly cruel and unusual.
In 2014, a federal judge issued a stay on executions in Arizona after the botched execution of Joseph Wood. The process took nearly 2 hours and 15 injections. Witnesses say Wood gasped for air for more than an hour.
I counted about 660 times. He sort of gasped, kind of looked like as if he was trying to breathe or catch air.
This drug cocktail that the state of Arizona is using, that these drugs are not working as they are intended to work.
A review by the Arizona Attorney General would find that execution was not botched and said Wood did not suffer. Fast forward to 2016, when officials in Arizona declared the state did not have the drugs necessary to carry out an execution and were unable to obtain them.
This is the first execution in 8 years.
Then in May of 2022, the state's first execution since Joseph Wood, it also had issues. Clarence Dixon, who was convicted of killing an ASU student in the 1970s, died by lethal injection. That process took nearly 2 hours, and critics argued it was another botched execution.
They had trouble getting the IVs into his left arm. They made 2 attempts. Those were not successful. They then went to the right arm and went to his groin area. Those were successful. 3 minutes after the drug started going in, his mouth fell open and he appeared to stop breathing.
There were 2 other executions by lethal injection in 2022. Frank Atwood in June. He was convicted of murdering an 8-year-old girl. And Murray Hooper in November. He was convicted of killing 2 people in the 1980s.
Took the IV team quite a while to find a vein, and they finally went into his femoral artery. At one point, as all of this was going on, he looked through the glass and said, "Can you believe this?"
It took probably 10 minutes to do that whole procedure. Then they went in and did a normal IV in his upper arm. The first one they missed, weren't able to get a good flow. So they tried a second one, and that was easily done.
So in January of 2023, Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs announced a pause on executions, ordering a top-to-bottom review of death penalty procedures, from the purchasing and administering of lethal injection drugs to the training and experience of the execution team.
I think that there was a pause on executions for quite a while because of the botched execution. I don't remember how many years ago, and then the inability to acquire the lethal injection drugs. And I don't think any of that was reviewed or studied in a thorough way when executions were resumed.
At the time, Governor Hobbs said the execution report would be made public.
If the state of Arizona is executing people in the name of Arizonans, Arizonans deserve transparency around that process.
But last November, the governor ended that review when she dismissed David Duncan, the retired federal magistrate judge she appointed to do it.
I feel confident in the team at Corrections. And, you know, the judge, through the process, unfortunately, wasn't up to the task. He was expanding his report far beyond the scope of what the executive order asked him to do.
Ultimately, the director of the Department of Corrections sent his own review saying the state is ready to resume executions by lethal injection. ABC 15 has asked that Department of Corrections for an interview to talk about their report. We received a statement saying they are prepared and confident in their lethal drug supplies quantity and quality.